It's interesting to me because, we've all kind of watched Matt Hoffa going through his issues with his podcast and stuff, but he at one point, I guess, had this big deal on the table with Revolt and basically said no to it because he wanted to keep grinding on his own independent hustle. And then I'm not counting him out or anything like that. I mean, I'm sure that he's going to be able to figure out how to keep his shit good and everything, but it feels like he's kind of dealing with a bunch of the consequences of maybe trying to stay independent, whereas you took a more corporate route.
And sometimes that's not. Sometimes you take out the soul of something.
Yeah.
You take out what makes it special. I should have probably never did that deal. And when they say every deal ain't a good one or all money ain't good, and it's not because it was a bad place or they was bad people, but just because it took out what made it special. And then I changed at that point.
It's like the same story that we have heard a billion times of rappers, where it's like when you're putting out your own music and you're getting to go do collabs with whoever, it's fun. And then you sign that big deal, and all of a sudden the label wants you to hold back all your music and only put out this one project, and they want to control who you work with. And you always hear a rapper say that's when the fun got sucked out of it.
That's when the fun is gone. That's when the what came natural. It becomes a business.
Yeah.
And sometimes something that's organic is fun, it's free, it's flowing, but then you do a deal. And now it's a business. Yeah. And now it's schedule. Now it's wait. No, we can't do that. You gotta have the rollout. Or everything has to be lined up. Can't just put the music out no more, Maino. You gotta set it up. This has to be online. We doing press. So it becomes a business.
No, 100%. I mean, it was wild to see the way that the situation with Math kind of went down, because
so he don't have his podcast no more at all.
He still has it, but he doesn't have that space. He was doing it out of that barbershop, and then like part of the allure of it from the beginning was that he had this whole crew of his homies who were in the room, and it kind of went left with like the vast majority of them, where a couple of them branched off and they started the Bag Fuel podcast and shit like that, and it's like, when you hear the stories from them, it's such a similar experience that I've kind of been through with some of my ex-hosts and everything. But like at one point, I guess he had months where he made $200K off of YouTube, and then certain people around him who are the other guys on camera, they're looking at that and they're feeling like they deserve to be, compensated adequately. And I guess Matt had a different perspective on it. Also, he's the one who's having to take care of the bills. He's the one paying for the space and everything like that. So it's like, for sure, like, when you've got a bunch of guys who, not to be derogatory towards them, but like haven't really seen like that level of success. And then all of a sudden they're trying to figure out how this works. How do we split this evenly? How do we make sense of this in a fair way? Right. It's just almost inevitable. That's just not going to really work out.
Kind of like all of them had an issue over the bread.
Yeah, largely, I think, and that's like certain people, they're seeing him with this formula. It's like you see your homie selling drugs and you're like, well, shit, I want to sell drugs too. You see, I guarantee that everybody who ever like went to the studio with Dr. Dre then started rapping and figured out they were going to sign their own artists. So they're going to, it's like everybody sees the hustle. They want to try to mimic it or recreate it. But like the beauty of the Math Hoffa thing at a certain point felt like a real solid group of homies that all had been friends for such a long period of time. And almost instantaneously, the money and the success just kind of strips away the connection from them.
Yeah, we see that often.
Yeah.
A couple will go on a reality show and then break up.
No, yeah, exactly.
Like it's groups start off in the street together, grind, get on, blow up, and then break up.
Yeah. Definitely.
So it happens.
Yeah. It's easy to stay tight with people when nobody experiences like an outsized amount of success.
Right. But sometimes what's special too though, like the area, right? I think what made his show good too was the barbershop.
Exactly, yeah.
So I don't know exactly, is he still doing something now?
He's still doing it. He did like a dope BG interview the other day, but they filmed it in a regular podcast studio, which is like, now it's gone from the barbershop with all his homies.
That was a vibe.
Yeah, it was just something about it.
Sometimes that vibe is the area, the location. That was a vibe, because I did an interview over there, and then I popped up when Ice with Vezo was in there. So yeah, that was a vibe. You sat in your own barber chair. That was a dope setup.
Definitely. And I mean, part of the other thing about it, not to get too like inside baseball, is that I feel like that shit blew up during the pandemic, and Math was kind of early with a few of these interviews. You know, he had Fat Joe, and that was a huge interview. He had 21 Savage, and that was a huge interview.
Huge, yeah.
And now it's like there's so many more people doing content that some of those interviews wouldn't really necessarily be as big as they were at that time. But I feel like he just kind of like skyrocketed into the conversation with the Joe Buddens and the academics, et cetera.
Yeah, he did.
But it was almost kind of premature because he hadn't necessarily built enough of a foundation to support that, you know? And so then it's tough when you're relying on guests because you got to keep it going.
That's the problem with and I think it's either you, here's the thing. It's either you relying on guests or you saying the most obnoxious, disrespectful, to bring, either way.
And Math's not really that guy. You know, Math doesn't want to
Right,
have a
right,
viral
right,
day
right,
off
right.
of
That's what I'm
shitting
saying.
on somebody, you know?
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. He ain't on that. So it's either one of the two on the internet. So the guys that don't have the relationships to get guests are usually the guys that's saying the most outlandish things. You know, again, true or not, just saying the most, oh, suck my dick, this and that. Like, this is crazy. So you read it and it's just like, damn. So, yeah.
That's why when you look at the people who've really been successful, Joe Budden,
Right.
sitting down with a bunch of people he's cool with. Early on, it was just his close friends, kind of branches out over time to become people that he's really like employing to do the podcast thing. But he kept it pretty simple. It's not guest-based.
Every now and then he'll have a guest on it.
Right, yeah. But when he does, it's just like adding fuel to it. It's not like the skeleton of it is all about just him talking to the homies. Academics in his house by himself. He does interviews, but they're just kind of sprinkles on the top of it or whatever. Vlad is just him in a room.
Right.
He gets his guests. It is what it is, you know? And it's like when you see somebody skyrocket off of just the guests, it's like either you're Shannon Sharp, who apparently is going to be able to just get the biggest guests for all the time because he's so beloved at this point, or Joe Rogan, who can just literally get whoever he wants. But yeah, it can be a tough thing.
So because you don't know who they watching for. They watching it for you, or they watching it to see the guests.
Yeah.
So you got to build you up. You got to build that love-hate relationship that you got with your audience. You love me today, hate me tomorrow, but for whatever it is, I'm watching it to see this guy.